back, guys. So now we're going to talk about how to build and use queries in Access. A lot to cover, so let's dive in. Now first let's understand what a query is. A query answers a question about the information in our database. What this query does is it allows us to select a subset of fields and records from one or more of our tables and then presents us that selected data in a single data sheet, so it's easy to view. A major benefit of working with data through a query is that we can focus on only the specific information we need, rather than searching through all of our fields and our records from our larger tables. Technically, a query is a set of SQL, or structured query language, instructions, but because we can use Access query tools, we don't need to know SQL. So let's see what a query looks like. I've opened Access. I have some files I'm going to work with, so I'm going to click on Open Other Files over here, and then I'm going to click on Browse, and then I have these Access files ready to go. So I'm going to open the Quest Travel file. And again, if you get the security warning about enabling the content, go ahead and click to enable it, and then we'll see our database open here. Now I'm going to scroll this over so that I can actually see all the names of my tables, queries, forms, etc. And now we're ready to go. Now Access provides us several tools to create a new query, and one of those ways is to just use the simple query wizard. Wizard meaning it magically walks us through it, so we don't have to remember all the steps on our own. Love it. So to do this, we click the Create tab on the ribbon up here at the top, and then we click the Query Wizard button here in our Queries group. Now when we click on it, it gives us some options as far as what type of query. We're going to just go with the simple query, the first option, and click OK, which then opens up our Simple Query Wizard dialog box. Now here, we want to select the fields from our existing tables or queries that we want to extract from. So we're going to click this drop down here and click on Table Tours because we want to query that specific table. Now once we've done that, you'll notice the available fields change to the fields that are within that table. And I want to query the tour name, so I'm going to double click on that, and then the city, the category, and the price. So double clicking on all of those. So I have 4 items so far, but I'm not yet done. I want to also query another table within this specific query. So I'm going to click on this drop down again, and this time I'm going to select the customers table. So that's table : customers, so I had to scroll up to find it. There it is. And from this specific table I want to pull over the first name and then the last name, and now I'm good to go. These are the fields I would like. So now I'm going to click Next, and it's asking us if we want to show detail, which is every field of every record, or just a summary. I want to keep it with detail, so I'm going to click Next again. And then it asks us what we want to title our query. So we're going to retitle this Tour Customer List in camel case. Camel case means no space, but capital letters for the first letter of each word. And then I'm going to click Finish. And voila, there is my query. We will notice it has the 4 fields from the first table, and then the 2 fields from the other table, which generates a total of 102 records. Perfect. Now let's play with this data a little bit. I'm going to double click on this first word in my tour name, Stanley, and I'm going to change that to Breeze, B-R-E-E-Z-E. And I'm going to click out of it, and just like we covered in our last video, it's very responsive. It automatically updated the rest. And this again is because this specific tour name is only stored once in the tours table. Now let's try something else. We're going to double click on the city here, Orlando, and we're going to change that to Kissimmee, Florida, Kissimmee. And then I'm going to click out of it. Now let's select the record of the first entry, which to do that is the record selector arrow. To get that arrow, we click on the very left little gray box next to that row, and you'll be able to tell because the mouse will change to that black arrow. Once it changes to that black arrow, click and it selects the entire record. And then we're going to click on our Home tab here and select to delete. It will prompt us and say, if we do this, we won't be able to undo this. Are we sure? So let's go ahead and select yes, we're sure, goodbye. So notice we can delete records from a query the same way we can delete them from tables, so be careful. We will notice now that we have 101 records left. So we're done playing with a specific query. We can go up to the tab here, right click, and then click Close. We'll notice it here on the left, and it is responsive, meaning that if we start modifying our tables, adding more customers, more tours, and if we run this query again, it will show those new tours or new customers. Awesome, right? Now let's try the query design view. With the query design view, we can add, delete, or move fields in an existing query to specific sort orders, to specify sort orders, or to add criteria to limit the number of records shown in the resulting data sheet. We can also use the query design view to create a new query from scratch. So let's go. We're going to double click the tours by state query at the very bottom here. And then make sure you're in the Home tab. If you're not, click on it at the top. And then here at the very left, you'll see View. We're going to click that down arrow and click on Design View. And notice it does change. Here are our field lists. And then this is that join line right here. And you'll notice that little tiny 1 to what looks like an infinity symbol. That's 1 to many. And down here at the bottom, we see our query design grid. So here in our first criteria field, I'm going to type in the state Florida and then tab out of it. Notice it added the quotes around it. Note that the query criteria is not case sensitive, so Florida could be capital Florida, it could be mixed case, it could be all lowercase. That in itself doesn't matter. And now let's click the View button over here and select the Datasheet view again. There is our query. You will notice state name Florida and then all the tour names that exist in that state. We can save this query by going to File, Save As, and we would want to save it as an object since this is just the query versus the whole database. Click Save As, and I'm going to save this one as Florida Tours. I'm going to save it as a query and click OK. Notice it's also here on the left, and now we're going to right-click and close it. So now let's look at how to sort and find data. The Access, Sort, and Find features are handy tools to help us quickly organize and find data in a table or query a data sheet. To see how this is done, we're going to double click on the Tours by Category query, and then we're going to change the view here to Design, and then I'm going to open this up so we can see it a little bit more. I'm going to open up our list, and then I'm going to double click on the duration so that we can see that field. Notice it popped up down here. When we double click on a field in our field list, Access inserts it in the next available column. We could also drag and drop it, whatever works best for you. And note, if we wanted to select a specific category, we can hover over the top, similar to what we did when we selected a record. From the left, we can select the field from the top. Now we notice here in this query, it is sorted by category and then by tour name. We want to go ahead and change that sort order so that the record sorts first by the tour start date, then by the price. So to do this, we're going to click Ascending in our category field here and hit this drop down and select Not Sorted. We're going to do the same for our tour name, and then we're going to go over here to our tour start date, and then we're going to select Ascending, and then we're going to go over here to our price and select Ascending. So we've changed our sort order so that now the tour start date and price are going to sort versus the category and the tour name. To view the results, we just click on View and then Datasheet. And there we have it. Now we notice here the first two, they're not in ascending order, but we do notice with the date, it's starting with the oldest first. And then after sorting by date, it's then sorting by price. We can tell because look, these have the same date here, May 30th, with the lower price first. Perfect. Now how to find data in our query. We have our query open here. If we just click this Find button within our Find group, we can type in whatever we're looking for. So if I'm going to look for sightseeing, I can type that in. And I can even replace data here. So if I want to replace sightseeing with, let's see, cultural, I can type the word to replace with here. And then if I click Replace All, it will automatically replace all of those instances with the word cultural. You notice here on the left it did that. When you're done searching or replacing, you can just simply click Cancel and it will close that box. And then that's it. Now you know how to sort and find data. Now let's see how to filter data. I'm going to go ahead and open my Tours table. And I'm going to click within my category Adventure. We'll notice up here we have a Sort and Filter group. We can click on this drop down for selection, and we can select whether it equals to, does not equal to, contains, or does not contain. I'm going to go ahead and select equals to Adventure, and we will see that it filtered our table to only show those with the category of Adventure. We also can tell to filter because we see this little filter icon next to the word category on the right. This is simply called Filter by Selection. If we wanted to filter comparative data, so for example, where tour start date is equal to or greater than a specific date, then we can use the Filter by Form option. To do this, we need to click on the Advanced option here and then select Filter by Form. We notice here our tab says Tours: Filter by Form, and right now we have a blank table. But we'll notice here this tab here says look for, and right now it has the word category Adventure. Well, notice the quotation marks on either side. This is how Access identifies it as text versus a numeric value. And to see how this one works, I'm just going to click in the tour start date cell, and then I'm going to type in a date. I'm going to put July, so 7, an asterisk or a star, another dash, and then the year. Now the reason why I'm putting a star is because I'm saying any day in July. This is known as a wildcard. Now that I've done that, I'm going to click on this toggle filter button up here, and that will apply the criterion that I established. And so we see that there are 2 specific tours that occur in the month of July that have the category of adventure. Very neat, right? Now before we go any further, let's talk a little bit about wildcards. Wildcards can come in very handy because they represent any character in the condition entry. So we can use a question mark to search for a single character, or an asterisk, the star, to search for any number of characters. So here the star made more sense because there are potentially single number days in a month or double digit days in a month. So keep those in mind. Now we're done with this table, so I'm going to go ahead and right click to close this one. Now let's apply some AND criteria. We can limit the number of records that appear on a query datasheet by entering criteria in the query design view. To create AND criteria, we must enter 2 or more criteria on the same criteria row of the query design grid. So I'm going to click on the Create tab in the ribbon here, and then I'm going to click on the Query Design button. It's going to pop up this dialog box here. I'm going to double click on Tours, close that, drag and open this so that we can see all the different fields. And then I'm going to double click on tour name, duration, state abbreviation, and category. Notice as I clicked on all of these, Access added these fields to the query grid below. Now I'm going to click on the first criteria cell for the state abbreviation field. I'm going to type in FL for Florida, and then I'm going to click on View to see the results. So notice when we query for only the tours with Florida, we get a total of 9 records returned. Now we're going to add criteria to select only the tours in Florida that are part of the adventure group. This is where the AND comes in. I'm going to click the View button here to close that view out. Now you notice I'm back in my design view. And then I'm going to click the first criteria cell for the category field. And this time I'm going to type in adventure. Notice again it puts the quotes around it because it's text. Now let's click view again and see what happens. Aha, now we're down to 5 records because it's applying both criteria when doing our query. Now let's filter this even further. I'm going to click on view again to get out of this. And then now in the duration criteria, I am going to type in less than, which is a right facing bracket, an equal sign to mean less than or equal to, and then the number 7. And then I'm going to tab out of that and click view again. And now we are down to 4 records. So I'm interested in tours in the adventure category that are in Florida that are less than 7 days. So there we have it. And it's asking if I want to save it. I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And because I said to save it, it's going to ask me what I want to name it. So I'm going to call this Adventure FL for Florida, and then click OK. And there it goes. So that's AND criteria. Now let's talk about OR criteria. We use OR criteria when any one of the criterion must be true in order for the record to be selected. So I'm going to right click on the Adventure Florida query. I'm going to click copy to make a copy of it. And once I've clicked at it, I'm going to right click and hit paste, and it's going to ask me what I want to name this copy. So I'm going to call this Adventure Cultural Florida, and then click OK, and we will notice that it added this new query here on the top. I'm going to right click it and select Design View to open it. And then this time, notice we copied the previous query, so we have our existing criteria already established. And then notice here we have the OR category field. So below adventure, I'm going to type in cultural and tab out of it. So it's going to look for adventure or cultural. I'm going to click on view to take a look, and notice that we went to 11 records. So it jumped up. And that's because you'll notice here on the right, instead of just the 4 adventure records, now we have the additional cultural records added as well. Because I'm flexible, either one interests me. But I do want to go to Florida. That's definitely on my bucket list. And I do only have a week of vacation, so I need to make sure they are only 7 days. And notice here we have some different locations and different days amounts. So to make sure that it's less than 7 days and in Florida, we need to modify the second row of the query grid. So I'm going to click on view again to close this view out. And then in here under the 7, I'm going to type in the same information. So when it looks at cultural, it's going to still apply my other existing rules. Once I've done that, I can click on view again, and we will see that it collapsed it to just tours in Florida less than 7 days, exactly what I wanted. And that's how we apply OR criteria. And lastly, let's talk about how to format a data sheet. So a report is the primary access tool that we use to create professional printouts because, people need to see this data, right? We want to be able to present this data that we're generating. So a data sheet allows us to apply some basic formatting modifications. So let's go ahead and format it to make it look more presentable. In the navigation pane here, I'm going to click on the Customers table, and it automatically again opens it in Datasheet view. I'm going to click on the File tab and click Print, and then Print Preview, and this is what it would look like right now. I know it's kind of small for you to see. There we go. By default, the printout of the datasheet contains the object name and the current date in the header. So the customers and then the date. We can click on this little arrow down here to see the next page. And we'll notice here, oh yuck, it just shows 2 of our columns on the second page. We can't have that, right? So in order to make this more presentable, we're going to change the page layout and then the font size. So to do that, we're going to click up here at the top, see where it says page layout. Let's click on landscape. And then that way we fit more of our columns in a page. And then we're going to close this print preview button for now because we want to make changes to our fonts and font size and color and all that, and we can't do that in the print preview option. Now that I'm back here in my table, I'm going to go over here to my text formatting, and then I'm going to click my drop down where it says Calibri, and I'm going to select Times New Roman. That font is more compact and will fit more on a page. And then for the font size, we're going to go to our standard 12. And then in between any of our columns here, we want to hover until we get this symbol here. It looks almost like an X with arrows pointing either way. And once you've got that symbol, double click and it will auto fit the content within those columns. There we go. Oh, the phone's not fitting here. Let's do that too. Okay, much better. Now let's print preview again and see what it looks like. File, print, print preview. And this time it is now all on one page. All the columns fit on just one page. If we scroll down here, we go to the second page. Now we just see additional records, but not extra columns of the first set because that was just sloppy. So much better. Now we can print this out in confidence, knowing that what we present to our boss looks much better. And again, we can close this out and go back and change the color, how the grid lines look. We have some other formatting options, so format it. Just make sure you keep it professional, and when you're ready to print, you can do so. And that's how we format a data sheet. I hope you have enjoyed this video. We covered a lot of ground. Stay tuned for the next one where we will learn how to use forms. If you want to make sure you don't miss the next video, remember you can subscribe, and I will catch you later.